In this country of vast distances and few roads, Australia has been served faithfully in the past by the vehicles then available. They were robust and reasonably efficient. But, and it is a big but, they had many disadvantages, chiefly from the procurement point of view. Even this handsome old-timer is an imported model. 50 years old, it is still running at walking pace, and at that age, a little encouragement is more than welcome. And so it was in both wars. Australia was almost entirely dependent on overseas production of vehicles and hazardous supply lines across enemy-infested seas. It is therefore natural and logical for the post-war trend in vehicle production to be towards self-support. Great strides have been made in this direction, and today vehicles of all types and makes are rolling off the production lines. The defense services, taking advantage of this development, seek to blend commercial practice and military characteristics in their vehicles of the future. The 2.5-ton four-wheel drive cargo truck shown in this film is the first Australian design to embody these valuable qualities. The design of the truck is based on the concept of a basic chassis with the highest possible Australian content, maximum use of commercial componentry, and interchangeability of parts. The engine is produced in Australia and is in current use on commercial vehicles. Searching tests were carried out in the up-to-date test houses of the design establishment. Here, for instance, the engine is being prepared for tests to establish fuel consumption, maximum torque, and maximum brake horsepower. In the humidity chamber, functioning of the engine cooling system was tested under simulated tropical conditions. The original requirement was for two-wheel drive, and this was used in the first prototype. A design establishment conversion kit enabled conversion to four-wheel drive. The front differential assembly is identical with that of the rear axle, and a modified rear axle housing is used. Wheel bearings in front and rear hubs are interchangeable. The road wheels carry 12 by 20 tires, which prove their worth in mud, snow and sand trials. The dual 20-gallon petrol tanks allow a maximum range of 300 miles. The transfer case is of design establishment origin. Economy of design is one of its main features. Interchangeability of gears, bearings, shafts and sleeves is indicated by the common colors of these components in the diagram. Under test at DE, results show that the transfer case will produce larger torque than the normal commercial type and can be used for bigger trucks, such as a 6x6 version of this truck. Four-wheel drive can be used in all gears on high or low ratio. The shafts transmitting the drive to front and rear axles are interchangeable. Identical semi-elliptic leaf springs are mounted above the front and rear axles. Each rear spring is supplemented by an auxiliary spring. The double-acting shock absorbers fitted are interchangeable. A compressor is provided to supply compressed air for trailer brakes operation. This also powers the servo mechanism for the truck brakes through the medium of an air pack servo mechanism to boost the hydraulic brake system of the truck and operate the winch controls. An optional fitting is a horizontal type power operated winch with 250 feet of cable. The winch will operate on front or rear winching. The cab is flexibly mounted over the front wheels. The front part can, with comparative ease, be completely removed, thus facilitating access to the engine. A 0.5-inch Browning gun can be mounted on the roof. The back of the passenger seat can be used as a standing platform for action or observation. The suitability of the machine gun mounting was tested at Puckapunyal on a pilot model of the truck and found satisfactory. The body fitted to earlier prototypes was the standard 3-ton body. This was unnecessarily heavy, so a new, lighter body was designed. With a nylon canopy fitted over this new body to replace the old canvas type, the overall weight of the body was reduced by some 600 pounds. Seating is provided for 14 passengers in the rear. The seats can be raised to increase cargo space. Two prototypes of the truck were subjected to exhaustive design trials at the Trials and Proving Wing, Monagita. These trials bring to light any design weaknesses or inadequacies in performance and ensure the fitness of the vehicle for user trials. Every effort is made to approach the trials realistically and to anticipate all possible hardships the vehicle may encounter in service. Natural hazards are used as much as possible, and when these are not available, the required conditions are simulated. This 1 in 2 grade tests what our American friends call a vehicle's gradeability. On the way down, the handbrake is applied. The specification says it shall hold on a 1 in 2 grade. It does hold, and a good thing too, for way down below is deep creek. Particular attention is paid to braking. This apparatus is used to mark a spot on the road to show where the brake is first applied. It is a .303-inch firing mechanism and torn-off barrel. A chalk-loaded cartridge is fired by depressing the brake pedal to actuate a micro switch connected to the gun. The Australian Motor Vehicle Standardization Committee specifies a stopping distance of 49 feet from 20 miles per hour for a loaded truck of this type. The requirement is well within the truck's capabilities. In this exacting test, the truck is winching itself up the 1 in 2 grade. Anchored to a 10-ton artillery tractor, it climbs slowly to the top of a hill which you would hate to climb on foot. This looks a much easier operation, but the winched vehicle is a heavily laden 10-ton artillery tractor with a dead engine and in second gear. Which is equivalent to 11,200 pounds, is watched closely and recorded on an instrument fitted in the towing vehicle and connected by hydraulic line to a drawbar dynamometer. Mud has few terrors for this versatile vehicle. Its winch will get it out of many a hole. It is not easy, but at a pinch, one man can pay out the winch line. This operation is much easier from the rear, and easier still if you have a mate. and the truck is high and dry again. The vehicle specification calls for fordability of at least 30 inches without special fording equipment. The truck easily fulfills this requirement with a lot in hand, at no detriment to fuel, lubricating, or electrical systems. The truck acquitted itself well over the obstacle course. This is the landing craft obstacle, whose reverse and forward slopes represent landing craft entry and exit. This test showed the excellence of the truck's articulation and gave promise of versatility in rough going. The belly clearance obstacle test is always done with a fully loaded truck. This formidable-looking obstacle is designed to test the clearance allowed by extreme chassis twist. Rail transportability of vehicles is a most acute problem in Australia because of the different rail gauges in use in the various states. A vehicle of this type, which is completely acceptable, is indeed rare. The truck qualifies for this rating. A maximum speed of not less than 50 miles per hour is required. Road trials at Monagita showed this to have been achieved. With the full approval and generous cooperation of the Snowy Mountains Hydroelectric Authority, it was possible to test a prototype truck under cold weather and snow conditions. The opportunity was also used to test cold weather clothing loaned by the Australian Division of the Department of External Affairs. The trials were a success and proved the suitability of the new truck under such conditions. Chains were used at times, and they helped, but were difficult to fit and to remove with the large section tires. These tires, however, proved invaluable in firm, deep snow, as the track in this picture clearly demonstrates. Windscreens ice up quickly on a cold truck, and wipers are quite useless until the ice is removed. Once it is done and the engine started, the heat from the cabin keeps the windscreen free of ice. The design establishment is also responsible for preparation of production drawings and specifications, user handbooks, maintenance scale illustrations, films, and sundry other publications. Thus, when this prototype truck set off for its Australia-wide user trials, sufficient literature was made available to troops before they actually saw the vehicle. And so the Inter, as it had long been known, entered on a most important phase, its debut in the hands of the Australian military forces.
The first Army trials took place at the Jungle Training Centre, Canungra. The prototype used was P3, which was fitted with a 5-ton winch. The other truck in the picture is a 2.5-ton 6x6 Army vehicle which was used as comparator vehicle and also has a winch. Each vehicle was loaded to 2.5 tons for 700 miles and 3 tons for 100 miles. During the Canungra trials and those that followed elsewhere, no defects were remedied until they'd been inspected by design establishment engineers. Every possible weakness was examined and user opinion analyzed. Rather excessive blue smoke from P3 was investigated. An incorrectly marked sump dipstick was discovered, and it was found that this had caused overfilling and the blue smoke. In wet conditions, this track was very difficult to negotiate. Both vehicles made it, the comparator vehicle having the easier run in the tracks of P3. The second prototype, P2, was delivered to the School of Military Engineering for trials by the 7th Independent Field Squadron at Casula. This could well be called trial by torture. The road has been deliberately bulldozed to scare off private motorists. On it, P2 staged a first-class exhibition of rock and roll. No wonder the sappers asked for hand grips for passengers. There was considerable tray movement on a road such as this. A commercial type vehicle would find this going a bit too rough. Hardly fair wear and tear this, but P2 survived the ordeal and suffered no damage. The old enemy mud was one of the main ingredients of this potpourri which the sappers cooked up for P2. That there was no postprandial remorse speaks well for the truck's constitution. Water was there too on this narrow track through the trees, but P2 in full sail had a fairly easy passage. One temporary stoppage was caused by a submerged log which had lodged under the spring hanger. left lock, the front wheels are acting like a dozer blade. The driver's trying to drive out of deep, ooze-filled ruts, but finds it more than difficult, so carries on the best way he can. From Casula, P2 went to the 2nd Royal Australian Regiment for trials at Holsworthy. Each unit entrusted with the trial of the 2 prototypes was given a comprehensive indication of requirements, but a certain latitude in regard to the selection of terrain. Perhaps this accounts for the use of this very rough and very smelly rubbish tip, maybe a means of distracting the attention of the driver. Drivers new to P2 were a little reluctant at first to use the high-revving engine flat out, but familiarity soon brought an improvement in performance. The vehicle was well liked by the infantry, who particularly welcomed the reserve of engine power on steep going. Several important points were referred to the design engineers present at the trials for later investigation. One of these was a tie rod weakness, which has since been remedied. After completion of the Jungle Training Centre trials, P3 was handed over to the Royal Australian Artillery. The truck was taken to Cronulla Beach for trials representing a dry landing on a sandy beach. The gunners had already tested P3 on all classes of road and across country. It was not long before P3 struck trouble. As soon as it started to climb in the dry, loose sand, the wheels dug in and P3 was stopped in its tracks. But it was realized that the tires were still inflated for road running. When reduced, there was an appreciable improvement, and by experiment, the optimum pressure for these conditions was determined. In these sand trials, the comparator vehicle was completely outclassed. This is attributed to its smaller section, higher pressure tires. With its large section tires, P3 managed by compacting the sand in its tracks to extricate itself from an awkward situation. The 6x6, after several more attempts, had finally to give up and take the easy way out, downhill. The gunners reported favorably on P3, at the same time offering constructive suggestions for improvements which were invaluable to design engineers when assessing the results of the trials. P3 was next put through its paces at Puckapunyal, where the 1st Armoured Regiment gave design establishment representatives most enthusiastic cooperation. This particular climb was more difficult than it appears. The surface was slippery and loose stones covered the track. The gradient was 1 in 3. Like P3, the comparator vehicle had little trouble in reaching the crest, but took longer to do so than its rival. Trees were a constant hazard and entailed much split-second maneuvering, which called for high driving skill. The highlight of the Puckapunyal horror stretch was a deep ditch, which often defeated both vehicles. 2 feet of mud covered the bottom of the ditch, and logs and branches of trees had been thrown in to stiffen it. The debris in the ditch complicated matters, for the wheels spun ineffectively on the smooth, wet wood. Maneuvering into less disturbed areas of the ditch was impossible because of the steep departure angle and the fact that a sturdy tree stood on one side of the exit and a large stump on the other. So, trapped like a beetle in a basin, P3 has to call for help. Forward winching was necessary here, and willing hands soon paid out the rope. P3, it seems, is not the only one without traction. This operation became familiar as P3 made its many circuits of the course. Armoured Regiment trial personnel are now able to speak with authority and feeling on the value of the winch. Note the clean windscreen of the first vehicle, P3, and the mud-spattered windscreen of the 6x6 with its conventional cab. In these trials, no holes were barred, and it's now for the design engineer to study the results and interpret them to the ultimate benefit of the Australian military forces. And so back to the design establishment for examination and clarification of all design details before the all-clear is given for production. In the meantime, the design establishment had become the Army Design Establishment. Finally came the time for the first production models of the new trucks to make their first appearance on Australian roads. A demonstration was staged in which Army drivers new to the trucks put them through their paces at a chosen testing ground in which sand was a prominent feature. Representatives of the press, the cinema and television were there to record the debut of the first Australian-made services vehicle, an auspicious occasion. In this particular test, the two trucks made light work of a succession of sand ridges varying from 12 to 20 inches high. As they were unloaded, their progress was rather lively. Two NCOs chosen to drive the trucks handled them expertly, despite unfamiliarity with their new charges. This 80% sandy downgrade was taken in low ratio bottom gear, four-wheel drive, at about 7 miles per hour. It can be seen that in these tests the production models fulfilled the promise of their prototypes. The outcome of more extensive troop trials which are to take place in northern Queensland is awaited with confidence. And so to the final stage of cooperation between the Australian Army, government departments and industry, which fills a present requirement and holds bright promise for the future. An impressive sight greeted 800 employees and 200 guests on April the 17th, 1959, when the handing over ceremony took place at International Harvesters Dandenong Works. Before presenting the keys of the vehicles to the Minister of Supply, Mr. Home, IH Managing Director Mr. Killow outlined how a cooperative effort between government departments and private enterprises made the venture possible. Expressing his appreciation, Mr. Home handed the keys to the Minister for the Army, Mr. Kramer, who in turn passed them to the Master General of Ordnance, Major General Cannott. It was the General's order that sent the vehicles on their way for service with the Australian Army.